How was I supposed to know that this moment would change my life completely? It was just an ordinary day until I walked into that room. I noticed the door was ajar. Something in me stirred in a matter of seconds. I could have turned around and ignored it, but I didn't, because at that moment when I realized what I was seeing, I knew nothing would ever be the same again. And yes, it was my fault, because I was the one who set the phenomenon in motion and the one who didn't stop it. George was at work. The house was quiet, but I heard soft sounds coming from upstairs. Elliot was in his room at first. I paid no attention to it. Just another one of those youthful moments, lost in his own world. But maybe he wanted a cup of coffee. A little chat would be welcome. As I climbed the stairs, I tried to figure out where the sounds were coming from. When I approached his room, I noticed the door was trembling slightly. "I be in." I was about to call out to him, but suddenly my eyes fell on Elliot. He was sitting on his bed, his laptop on his lap, the bright screen casting a glow on his face. His hands were moving. At first, I thought he was watching something exciting, maybe an action movie. But when I took another step and changed my angle, the blood drained from my face. That was the moment I understood exactly what Elliot was doing. My eyes caught the reflection on the screen, and a cold wave washed over me. I hadn't expected this. I didn't want to see this. Elliot got flustered. He tried to compose himself frantically. He turned down the volume on his laptop, but it was too late. The moment was already there. Our eyes met. His face turned bright red, the shame in his eyes. Unforgettable. "Ah, I'm sorry," he stammered, looking away. I have frozen. Huh. I opened the door, but I had no idea what I was trying to say. A strange W passed through me. I was ashamed. Yes, but my mind was also occupied with thoughts I couldn't grasp. I quickly left the room. My heart was pounding in my throat. I pressed my hands against my face to stay calm. What the hell was that? I whispered to myself. What had I just done? Why had I been so careless? But was I the only one responsible? "Oh, Darlene," I said sternly to myself, but the chaos inside me was triggered by much more than just what I had seen. Elliot was 24. He was no longer a child now, but I was 48. A woman who had known her share of shame in life. I had never been in a situation like this before, but I knew exactly what shame was. I remained frozen in the hallway, my heart still racing. I ran my fingers through my hair in an attempt to compose myself when Elliot appeared in the doorway. He straightened the collar of his shirt, cleared his throat, and looked away. "Darlene, I'm sorry. I thought I had closed the door," he said with an uncertain but sincere voice. I quickly shook my head and looked away. No, actually, I should apologize. I should have knocked before I came in," I said softly, not knowing what else to say. Silence. But it wasn't just any silence. We had lived in the same house for years, but this was the first time we looked at each other like this. The first time there was this kind of tension between us. "I have to go downstairs to make something for dinner," I said quickly, turning towards the stairs. My voice was trembling, but I tried to stay calm. Elliot said nothing. He just kept looking at me as if trying to sort things out in his head. Before big things start to happen between Elliot and me, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, turn on notifications, and listen to this story until the end. I promise you everything will get really exciting. Until that evening, we didn't say a word. No text, no eye contact, not even polite niceties. That silence whispered that things would never be the same. During dinner, we sat at the same table, but we couldn't look at each other. We only heard sound, the clinking of cutlery against our plates. We needed to talk to relieve the tension. We both knew that, but how did that night go? Then the next day, and the day after that, everything seemed normal. But nothing was truly normal. Our silence only strengthened the invisible tension between us. It grew even stronger. And then, one afternoon, Elliot sat down next to me. I saw the hesitation in his eyes, but it was clear he wanted to set things straight. "Darlene, about the other day. I'm really ashamed of it. I'm sorry. I didn't want it to go like this, please. I don't want this to ruin everything between us." he said with a nervous but sincere voice. I took a deep B. As strange and unexpected as it was, I had to put him at ease. I smiled. I shrugged lightly and said, "Oh, Elliot, believe me, I've had my share of embarrassing moments over the years." I shared some of those moments with him. His smile relaxed a bit and he nodded. His shame dissipated somewhat in that moment. At that moment, it seemed like the tension between us had disappeared. But deep down, I knew nothing was really over, even though everything seemed to be getting better. This conversation had completely erased the boundaries between us, and I effed things would go much further. Elliot let out a small sigh and looked at the table. "I think we're even now," he said softly. I frowned slightly and turned to him. "What do you mean?" I asked. Curiosity crept into my voice. His expression changed for a moment as if he just realized he had said something he couldn't take back. He hesitated for a moment, but he had already started, and now he had no choice but to continue. He breathed in deeply, and then looked away, whispering, "I've seen you in a way you didn't know about." Like electricity went through me. I froze for a moment at what he whispered, at the weight of those words. Elliot's face was red, but he continued, "I never told you because I was too ashamed, but I never forgot it. Actually, it was my little secret, something I couldn't get out of my head." My heart pounded. A strange W overcame me. A strange AF that told me something. Elliot's words weren't just a confession. They broke all the boundaries between us. I looked at him. He looked at me too. And now we both knew this was no ordinary conversation. The air in the room had become thick. Everything had changed. From that day on, everything changed. There had always been a distance between us, that invisible line that separated us. But now it felt like that line had completely disappeared without me even noticing it. I had started spending much more time with Elliot. Small moments, seemingly insignificant conversations, but in reality, each one only fueled the tension between us. Now we even started watching movies together. Before, we always kept our distance, but now there was an unspoken something between us, something we both but never acknowledged. Sometimes when Elliot placed his arm on the couch, when my leg teased his, or when our laughter mingled, I felt something strange inside me, but I tried not to think about it. One night I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned in bed, but the restlessness inside me wouldn't allow it. I had only one thing on my mind. This couldn't go on. I had to set a boundary. If he had for me, I had to be honest and put an end to it. With that thought, I got out of bed. My heart was pounding, but my feet had already carried me to Elliot's room. His door was ajar, and the weak light inside. Its faint light illuminated the room. When I entered, I saw him. He was asleep, but at that moment, my eyes weren't on him. They were fixed on something else, something important. My bee caught, my body froze. For a moment, when I saw him like that, a storm raged inside me. I shouldn't have seen it. I should have turned around immediately, but I didn't. I stood there for a few seconds trying to understand what I was for, then I took a step back. There was something I couldn't suppress, but I had to ignore it. I went back to my room, lay down, but nothing was the same that night. I had no idea how complicated things were. No matter what I did, I couldn't resist the growing closeness with Elliot. Every day the boundaries faded more and more, and the attraction between us only grew stronger. I hadn't even noticed how far it had gone, but one thing I knew for sure, turning back was impossible. Then Elliot came home like this. He was drunk. The sound of the door, the objects he knocked over. Those sounds should have woken George, but I knew how hard it was to wake George. So I quickly left my room and walked towards Elliot. I didn't even have time to get properly dressed before I was standing next to him. Elliot's eyes were hazy and a slight smile played on his L. "Darlene, is it really you?" He had trouble speaking because of the alcohol, but he was sincere. I breathed in deeply and took his arm. "Come on, Elliot. You can't walk around like this. We need to go upstairs. Quiet." But Elliot's eyes were fixed on me, with his face. He smiled softly. His gaze slowly moved over me. He looked me up and down. You know, you're really beautiful. Were you always like this, or did I just never notice? I froze for a moment. Then I quickly moved closer to Elliot. Enough. Come to the kitchen. I'll make you some coffee. I slowly led him to the kitchen. I tried to sober him up a bit, but because of Elliot's gaze and what he said, I was also confused. Elliot sat on the chair while I prepared the coffee. Suddenly he hit the mug with his hands and spilled it on the counter. Elliot, you need to be more careful, I whispered. I tried to quickly clean up the mess, but Elliot smiled softly. Were you always this kind? I hastily cleaned the kitchen. We couldn't stay here any longer. George was sleeping upstairs, but with Elliot in this state, we couldn't afford to make more noise. Okay, we're going upstairs, but quiet, I warned him. With my arm around his, I led him to the stairs. When we arrived in his room, his movements were even more unsteady. He needed to change, but he was too confused to do it alone. At first, I wanted to turn away, but when I saw him struggling to take off his shirt, I instinctively helped him. My fingers reached for the buttons of his shirt. Elliot's bee slowed at that moment. The tension between us filled the air. The silence only made it more intense. I knew exactly what I was doing, and at the same time I had no idea. Elliot looked at me differently, and this was one of those moments. One of the moments we would never forget. Elliot hesitated while changing. He let his hands slide down his body and stared at me. At that moment, I realized my bee had quickened. It was so quiet that the air in the room heavy, making it even hard to be. I'm not playing this game anymore, Darlene said softly, but with conviction. I stared at him without blinking. My heart was beating hard. But what was Elliot trying to say? You want to, he added in a deeper voice. We'd each other once and that's it. You think about it. I know it. In your thoughts before you fall asleep. A shiver went through me, causing me to take a small step back, but my feet glued to the floor. Elliot, that's not it, I said resolutely, but my voice trembled. Elliot smiled slightly, but it wasn't an innocent smile. We've been past the point of deciding what's right for a long time, Darlene. Stop lying to yourself. Then he took a step forward and another. He was so close now that I could his bee on my face. He raised his hands and let them gently slide over my cheek. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't because deep down I knew he was right. And then Elliot held me. All the silence, all the tension, the answer to everything was hidden in that moment. The thoughts swirling in my head suddenly calmed. All my doubts faded into a whisper. Because I had not resisted Elliot. And the truth is, I never wanted to. My hands trembled, but I didn't pee back when I saw the determination in Elliot's eyes. I knew there was nothing left to hide. I swallowed, bee in deeply, and slowly let the straps of my clothing slide off my shoulders. You're right, Elliot, I whispered, my voice barely louder than a sigh. Let's not play this game anymore. Bridging the distance between us completely, I lay down on the bed. My heart pounded in my chest, but turning back was no longer an option. Elliot slowly leaned towards me. He looked me in the eyes for a moment. Then he smiled. Don't be afraid, he said with a reassuring voice. Everything will be all right. I looked away. A shiver went through me, even though I couldn't admit it. I knew how long I had waited for this moment, but I still couldn't hold back the words. Elliot, I'm a little scared, I said. My bee was shaky because of a few big issues. Elliot smiled and ignored what I said as if he enjoyed it. Maybe it was because he was drunk. Elliot bent softly towards my ear and said, George mustn't wake up. I knew what he meant. It had to be quiet. I don't know what something big inside me. And I had to hold myself back to not make a loud sound. Elliot looked at me and said something like, I know, darling. Everything's okay. And you too. What did he know? I think he guessed and understood me. I couldn't hold back and closed my eyes. I held the sheets tightly with my hands, and I covered my mouth with my hand to make no sound. Elliot was so drunk that I didn't care at all. In fact, that affected me greatly. The excitement of the event combined with everything else and the irresistible FQ of something important. Elliot was drunk, tired, and flushed. I said, "Elliot, you're red, and we need to hurry." Elliot said, "Okay." But he continued like that, more and more, more and more. I had another contraction, and I didn't care at all. I wasn't even myself anymore. I closed my eyes and said, "Whatever you want, Elliot." Elliot must have liked that because he let go. He let go completely, and it was too much. The heat inside me was too strong. I quickly laid Elliot down on his bed and covered him up. Then I locked the door to his room. I wanted to shower quietly and fully relax. I had no idea what would happen next. Then I thought about what had just happened. I thought about it in the shower, but at the same time I was nervous, uncomfortable. And yet the moment I let go of my thoughts, I was clearer, strangely calmer. I couldn't even blame myself because my body was just as relaxed as my mind. I got dressed in silence, went to my bed and fell asleep as if nothing had happened. But the truth is, it was just a moment of excitement. A wave of irresistible desire. But nothing is ever that simple, and it wouldn't stay simple. Stopping there was impossible. More intense things happened, and eventually, George would find out everything. This story is not over. Make sure you follow me and subscribe so you don't miss the continuation. Turn on notifications and leave a comment. That helps you stay one step ahead of these stories. Your support is essential. And if you've made it this far, thank you for listening.